Hello everyone, I am Mahesh, working in ENH iSecure as a senior IAM engineer. We are discussing about transforms and use cases. And coming to the next slide. In this presentation, we are going to see an overview of the following topics. What is transform? Transform syntax, transforms of implicit and explicit type, types of transforms, transform operation, transform API endpoint, transforms versus rules. In the next slide, we will be know about what is transform. Coming to the next slide, let us understand about what is transform. Transforms allows you to manipulate attributes, values while provisioning to a source. It will help in manipulating any incoming data from the source as per the requirement. Transforms are configurable object that define easy way to manipulate attribute data without requiring you to write code. Transforms are configurable building blocks with sets of inputs and outputs. As we can see in the diagram, there is input, transform, output. In the input value, our data is coming from the identity attributes or account attributes, and according to the requirement we will write the transform, and in the output we can see overall result. For example, if we want to change the date format, the date mentioned in the source is dd YY format and we required in YY. This can be achieved using a simple transform. We will be showing a few examples in the coming up slides. In the next slide, we will be further discussing about the transform syntax. And coming to the next slide, the transform syntax has the following properties. The basic requirement for a transform is name, type, attributes. For name, we can take any objects that will be reflected to your identity profile. For type, we can put the transforms according to your requirement. For inputs, the developer can decide whether we want to take the value from identity attribute or account attribute. In the next slide, we are discussing about the input types. Primarily, there are two input types, implicit input and explicit input. First, we will be understand the implicit input. While creating the transform, if the input attribute is not configured, that will be the implicit type input. As I have taken one example, there is no any input attribute. There is only name and type. In the next slide, we will know the explicit type. In explicit inputs, if the input attribute is configured, the input will be called as explicit type. I have taken one transform. There I have used the input attribute. You can see the highlighted one. We will understand what is happening in the transform. Inside the attributes, there is source name. We need to keep the source name of yours, and in attribute name, which attribute you want to fetch, we need to keep there. In the next slide, we are discussing about primitive operations provided. Transforms are comprising of mainly 6 different parts. Object value retrieval. It is used to retrieve the values from the inputs we have provided. Basic string operation. In basic string operation, we can keep the all string operation used for the making transforms. Logic flow. In logic flow, we can do the conditional operation. Date operation. Date operation is used for comparing the date, and accordingly we can do the modify as per the requirement. Generators. Basically, it is used for generating the username with the unique values. Extended transforms. By not creating a new transform, we may use these to reuse the previous produced transforms. In the next slide, we will understand the object value retrieval transform. In object value retrieval, there are three transforms. Account attribute. This transform is used to get or return a specific attribute from a particular source of an identity value. Identity attribute. It is used to get the value of an user's identity attribute. This transform is often useful with a source account. Get reference identity attribute. In this transform, we can access another user's identity attributes from a given identity's calculation. You can utilize manager as a referential lookup to target identity with the transform for your convenience. In the next slide, we will trying to understand this transform. Here I have taken one example of account attribute transform. We can see that inside attributes I have taken key as attribute name and source name and value as end date and NELM source. Outside attributes block I have taken key as type and name, value as account attribute and account attribute transform. We can use this transform whenever we want the value from a particular source. In the next slide, let's discuss about identity attribute transform. Next one is identity attribute. In this example, we can see that key as name and the value is email attribute. The email value is taken from the identity attribute and the type we have taken as identity attribute and the name as identity attribute transform. We can use this transform whenever we don't have the value from a particular source. We can use identity attribute transform. Next slide, we will understand the get reference identity attribute transforms. Get reference identity attribute. With the help of this transform, we may retrieve another user's identity attribute. We will try to understand this example. This transform gets the user's manager's email address. This transform need the cloud service deployed util rule created by Sailpoint as the name of this referenced rule. Additionally, you need to set the operation to get reference identity attribute and take an UID attribute and correlates the identity whose identity get matched their email is shown. At the end, we have taken the type as rule and name as get reference identity attribute transform. Coming to the next slide, we are discussing about basic string operations. These are basic string operation. There are 18 transforms. These transforms are commonly used in any operation. I will discuss each and every transform. Base64 decode. This transform is used for converting string to Base 64. Basically, it is used for decoding purpose. Base 64 encode. This transform is used for converting base 64 to string. Basically, it is used for encoding purpose. Concatenation. Concatenation transform is used for combining two strings. This transform basically used to combine first name and last name. Index of. The index of transform is used to get the location of a specific substring. Suppose that if we given the string to find the index of a string, if it's found, it will return the index number. If does not, it will return 1. Substring. Substring transform is used to take the specific part of the string with provided begin index and end index. Split. Split transform basically used to split the string based on the provided delimiter. This transform is often usefully when you want to split combined names into their consecutive parts, or when you want to simplify any ordered list of values into a single attribute. Left pad. Left pad transform to pad the string left side when a user supplied character out to a specific number of characters. This transform is often useful for data normalizer situations such as user IDs are not uniform in length. A right pad. Right pad transform to pad the string right side with a user supplied character out to a specific number of characters. This transform is often useful for data normalization situation such as user IDs are not uniform in length. Replace. Replace transform is used for replace the specific string based on the provided regs. Replace all. Replace all transform used to replace the string based on the provided table attributes of key value pairs as an argument. Upper. Upper transform used to convert an string into upper letters. Lower. Lower transform used to convert an string into lower letters. Static. Static transform is used to return a fixed string value, or more commonly to evaluate velocity. Static transforms can also take other dynamically provided variables as input into the value attribute. Last index of. The last index of transform is used to get the last position of a specific substring. Trim. Trim transform used to trim white spaces from both the beginning and end of input string. Get end of string. Get end of string transform as an out-of-the-box rule transform provided through Sailpoint's cloud service deployment util rule. This rule always used to get the rightmost n characters of a string. Decompose diacritical marks. Decompose diacritical marks transform is used to remove the diacritical marks. E164 phone transform. This E164 phone transform is used to convert an incoming phone number string into E164 compatible number. In the next slide, we will be understand logic operation. Under logical operation, there are two transforms. One is first valid and next is conditional transform. First valid. The first valid transform to perform if then else operation on multiple data points to return the first piece of data that is not null. It can use it to get the same account name or email. This is often useful for the Sailpoint username UID attribute, in which case each attribute requires a value. Conditional. The conditional transform provides the if case condition only based on the positive or negative conditions. We are going to return the result accordingly. For example, if the department equals to IT, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. In next slide, we will be know about the date operation. Under the date operation, there are three transforms: date compare, date format, date math. Date compare. The date compare transform is used to compare two dates, and depending on the comparison, it will return the one value accordingly. For comparing the date, we can use some of the operations like less than or equal to, greater than, and greater than or equal to. We can use the date compare for calculating the lifecycle state. Date format. The date format transform is used to convert date time strings from one format to another. It is useful when we are syncing data from one system to another because each application uses a different format for date and time data. Date math. Date math transform can be used for performing mathematical operation like addition, subtraction, and rounding of a timestamp. It also allows you to work with a referential value of now to run operations against the current date and time is instead of a fixed value. In the next slide, we know about the generators. Under generators transform, there are 6 different transforms are present. Generate random string. Generate random string transform provides through Sailpoint Cloud Service Utility rule. This transform allows you to generate a random string of any length. Random alphanumeric. The random alphanumeric transform is used to generate a random string of any provided length. If you do not provide the length, it will give the default output, that is 32 character. Comparing the numbers and the letters, both lowercase and the uppercase. The maximum allowable value is 450 characters. Username generator. To set the logic to use when it determines a unique value for an attribute in an account create profile. Utilizing this username generator transform, the logic of the generator can be based as combining elements of an HR record or the username. Name normalizer. The name normalizer transform is used to clean or standardize the spelling of strings coming in from source systems. The most common use for this transform is for names. Random numeric. The random numeric transform is used to generate a random number of any length. The transform default value is 10 characters and maximum allowable value is 450 characters. UUID generator. The user UUID generator transform is used to create a universal unique ID in the form of 36 character string. Coming to the next slide, we will be knowing about extended transforms. Under extending transforms, there are two transforms. Reference transform. The reference transform is used to reuse a transform that has already been written within another transform. We can use this transform when we want to repeat the same logic multiple times within another transform. Rule transform. Rule transform allows you to reuse logic that has already been written for a previous use case. You can use the rule transform to reuse code containing with a generic rule. The next slide, we understand the sum of the transform operation. We will understand the concat transform. Here I have created one transform for joining the two strings under the attributes. I have taken the values, that is first name and last name, and the type we provided, that is concat. It will join the two string name we have taken as concatenation transform. As we can see in the diagram, in the next slide we will understand the substring transform. Another transform, that is substring transform. We can use this transform to get the inner portion of a string passed in the transform. As in transform, under the attributes we have taken the beginning index and the end index we have provided. The index value also will be see the input. I have taken as Mahesh, and the outside we will receive is he. The end index is returning the end index minus 1 value. We have provided end index as 4. It will calculate 4 minus 1. It means 3. Now it take the string from second index to third index. In next slide we will understand the nested transform. We will understand the nested transform. The output of a transform can be used as the input of another transform. As we can see in the diagram, we have provided the two strings, that is first name and the last name. We concat the string, and whatever the output comes, it is converting into lower by using the lower transform. As we can see, the output is lowercase. In the next slide, we will be understand the API endpoints where we can build the transform and post it. While using API, there are several methods can be used. Some of them are get, post, put, delete method. You will understand the each and every method that are shown here. To retrieve the all transforms that you have created, we can use the get method, and collection will be v3/transforms. Under get method, only if you want to retrieve only transform, single transform, there you require the ID of the transform that you want to retrieve. Next is post method. If you want to create new transform, we need to use post method. Next is put method. If you want to update the transform, we can use the put method. There we require the ID of the transform you want to update. Next is delete method. If you want to delete the created transform, we can use the delete method, and also require the ID of the transform that you want to delete. In the next slide, we will come to how to use the transform methods. In this slide, we will understand the how to execute our transform through the postman. First method is post method. Under that, we have used the URL of our tenant, and collection we have used is beta slash transforms. Here we can use v3 slash transforms as well. Under body, we have written our transform. In next slide, we will understand if you will click the send option, what should be the response. As we can check, after clicking the send option, the response is 201 created. It means that our transform is created. That we will get the ID, name, type of the transform. In the next slide, we will know if we want to update the transform, how we will update it. After creating the transform, if you want any modifications in same transform, we can use the put method. As we see in our transform, first we have taken the source name as HR source. If you want to update the source name by using put method, we can do it. For that we require the ID of the transform that we want to update it. We can check we have updated the source name as NLM source. It is updated. If the transform get updated, then we will receive the response 200 OK. In the next slide, we will be using the delete method. Delete method. If you want to delete the transform that you have created, we require their ID. By providing the ID, we can delete the transform. After clicking the send button, if the transform is successfully deleted, you will get 204 code. Last slide, we will be understanding the difference between the rule and transform. Transforms are JSON based configurations editable with IdentityNow REST APIs. Rules are implemented with code, typically bean shell, a Java like syntax. Transforms. It can support complex logic to modify aggregation and provisioning process. Rule. It supports more complex logic. Coming to the transforms, we can view, create, edit and delete transforms directly via REST APIs without any involvement of Sailpoint. By creating rules, there is involvement of Sailpoint for cloud rules. Thank you. Please follow ENH social media pages.